In the previous video, we talked about how to create an array and what an array is. Now in this video, we want to talk about how to access an array. So to access an element in the array, we said that we are going to use the name of the array and we need to use the index of that specific element. So an example of our friends array is if I say friends of 0, this is going to return to me the friend that is stored at position 0 in my array. If I say friend at 1, it is going to store or basically retrieve the friend that is at position 1 in my array. Similarly, if I want to change the element, I will just specify the location and then assign it a new value. And this is going to allow me to change that element. Now let me go back to my code and I will create new arrays because I want to have some order for those elements to show you how we can swap those elements in my array. So for example, if I have a list of tasks that I want to perform, now the tasks are going to be obviously strings, so I will say string array tasks is equal to, now I will not create a new array, I'll just list in my tasks here because I can just declare and initialize my array in the same line as we have seen. So the first task is going to be do my homework, for example. Second task in my array is going to be do the lab assignment. Let's have another one that says go shopping. Another task, why not have some fun, so play video games. And then I will have one task here that says prepare for my test. Okay, now I have some elements in my array. Now let me see how can I access some of the elements in my array. So if I want to access the first one, let me just print it out. So I will print, we said we will access it using the name of the array, which is in this case tasks, and then I will tell the position of that array. Let me save this. So run it, proceed, and now it says do my homework because this is the one at position 0. Now let me just delete this. Similarly, if I just go and say at 1 and save this and run it, it is going to refer to the second element, which is at index 1. Now index 3, 4, 5. Now if I try to access something that is out of the bounds of my array, I will get an exception that says array index out of bounds exception. Whenever you get this, you know for sure that you are trying to access an element by providing an index that is not in the array. Why is this important? Because we will see later on that we can automatically access all of those. So we know how to access an array. Now what is the big advantage that we talked about? We've seen that so far we're using a single print statement or a single statement to process any element in my array. So how is this going to be different than defining just data types? Now keep in mind that the indices are numbered and we can use a loop to access them. Simply we can just use a for loop that is going to access the elements one by just changing the number in each call. So if I assume that my array size is 7, what I can do is I will write a for loop that is going to start from 0 because I will start from index 0, and then I want it to be less than 7. Because remember, when the array size is 7, then the last index I can access is index number 6. And then I can just provide my index in here. So I can initialize, or I can just access. And we will see that we can use the same loop to print. So I can use the loop to add friends, and I can use the loop to print strings. Now if I don't want to manually enter the size of the array, I can just call the length feature of the array, and it is going to be returning the number for me. Now keep in mind, when we talked about strings, we also have seen length, but in strings length is a method, so we had to have parentheses. Now this is a common mistake where people put parentheses when they are trying to get the length of the array, and this is an error. So you will have to provide it without any parentheses. So let's go back and try to use a loop to print all of our friends. So what I will do is I will just take this out, and I will have a for loop starting from 0. So for an integer I that is equal to 0, and I can go manually and count the number of elements, but I know that I can use the length feature of my array to give me the elements. So basically I want to say while I is still less than the length of my tasks dot length, what I will do is I will increase I in every iteration. And inside my loop, what I will do is I will just go and print every single element in the loop by just using a regular print statement and providing I as my index for every iteration. Now what's gonna happen here is at the first iteration I is going to be 0, so printing the first element, then it's gonna be 1, printing the second element, and so on. So if I run this, so it's basically printing all of my elements. Now keep in mind that I can format those. So for example, if I wanted to display some kind of numbered list, what I can do is I will print I plus 1, and the reason for this is because I'm starting from 0, and then I need to add 1 to it, so I can just have my task started numbered from 1. And if I print this, so number 1 is do my homework, and then do the lab assignment, and the list goes on. Well, let me show you. If I take this out, it's just going to start from 0 because our I in the loop starts from 0. Now an example of if I do this, for example, if I say where I is less than or equal to the tasks, so now I will reach the last index and then I will increment by 1. And this is going to give me this exception in here. Now although it printed everything in here, if I go after my loop and say something like done, now getting this exception is going to stop the code where I got the exception. So if I revert this back to its original state, which is reaching the last index and stopping, I will be able to process whatever code that comes after it. And this is why we want to make sure that we do not exceed the length of the array to be able to run the rest of our code.